anyone who studied Imami history and the history of the Imams and the history of the Imamiyah, especially our madhab, they would know that after each Imam or after at least some Imams, there's been loads of disputes about who the successor is. There was no concept of the prophets told them who it is. Rather, the way that the successors were chosen were by the companions of the Imams, not based on any sort of, oh, the Prophet told us this, rather based on their own kind of sets and procedures.
Exactly. And let me show you the evidence for this, if you permit me.
Show us. Yeah, as a historian, these are things that you have to kind of, this is why it's important to know the history alongside your hadith literature.
Yes. So this, as you can see in front of you, is Usul al-Kafi. This is volume 1, chapter 81, the criterion to discern the truthful and false claims of entitlement to Imamat, leadership with divine authority. This is hadith number 7. Now, this particular chain in Al-Kafi may not be the most reliable one, but this same narration and the claims, the key claims of this narration have actually been transmitted in Imami sources through reliable chains as well. And that's why it's been included by the chain of Shaykh al-Mufid for this narration is actually reliable. And that's why Ayatollah Shaykh Muhammad Asif Muhsini has included it in chapter 53 of Mu'jam al-Ahadith al-Mu'tabara. And you will also see it in chapter 114 of Mu'jam al-Ahadith al-Mu'tabara, which is the collection of reliable narrations compiled by Ayatollah Shaykh Muhammad Asif Muhsini on the basis of the manhaj of Ilm al-Rijal that he follows, which is influenced by that of Ayatollah Sayyid Abul Qasim al-Khuli. Now, in this narration, you will see the learned Imamiyah are all familiar with this narration. It talks about how, observe very carefully what's going on, what's happening. Hisham ibn Salem, who is one of the closest companions of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, as per the traditional Imami narrative. Hisham ibn Salem said the following. He says, we were in Medina after Abu Abdullah, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, left this world. People had gathered around Abdullah ibn Ja'far, thinking that he was in charge of the task, that is leadership with divine authority. So can you imagine, after Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, the vast majority of the Shia, they mobilized and they rallied around who? Imam Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kadhim? No. They gathered around Abdullah bin Ja'far as-Sadiq, Abdullah al-Aftah, as he's known, because they thought he was the Imam. Now, the question is, if the Holy Prophet, if only the Holy Prophet can identify who the Ulil Amr are, then was Abdullah bin Ja'far identified as being among the Ulil Amr by the Prophet? If not, then why did the people gather around him? Why did the vast majority of the Shia, including the greatest companions of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, why did they claim his imamah? And why did they accept his imamah? And this is an established factor. It's mentioned in Rijal al-Kashi. Sa'ad ibn Abdullah al-Ash'ari will mention it, and Nawbakhti in Firaq al-Shia will acknowledge it. This is an established reality that the vast majority of Shias after Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam did not believe in the Imamah of al-Kadhim. Rather, they rallied around and they claimed the Imamah of Abdullah bin Ja'far, because Abdullah bin Ja'far himself was claiming his Imamah. He was saying that I am the authority after Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam. But now Hisham ibn Salem says, I and Sahib al-Taq went to see him while people were around him because of a hadith. Now, why did the people accept Abdullah bin Ja'far? Because of a hadith that they would narrate from Abu Abdullah alayhi salam that said that the one who is in charge of the task, Sahib al-Amr, the Imam, leadership with divine authority, will be the eldest son if he would not suffer any defects. Okay, so the Shia were circulating this hadith that the eldest son is the one who's supposed to succeed the previous Imam. So again, no designation from the Prophet. It's not like the Shia in that time say that the Holy Prophet will identify who the Ulil Amr are for us. And so after every Imam dies, we just check who is next on the list. The problem is this list did not exist. And that's why, what was the criteria that they were using to determine who is the next Imam? They said, well, we have a hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam that says that the one who succeeds the Imam should be the eldest son, if he does not suffer from any defects. In any case, He then says, we went to see and ask him, that is Abdullah bin Ja'far al-Sadiq, what we used to ask his father. So do you see what's happening here? Hisham bin Salem has decided that because Abdullah bin Ja'far has claimed the Imamate, the vast majority of Shia have accepted his Imamah. Before I accept his Imamah, let me test him. And so he goes up to him and he tests him. He says, we asked him about zakat to find out on how much property it becomes due. He said it becomes as 5 on every 200. So we asked if it would be 100. He said it will be 2.5. We said, by Allah, the Murji'ah, this is basically the proto-Sunnis, the Murji'ah does not say so. The narrator has said that he raised his hands to the sky and said, by Allah, I do not know what the Murji'ah group says. So they are testing Abdullah bin Ja'far al-Sadiq to see whether his verdict on zakat will be the same as that of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, or whether it will agree with the Murji'ah or the mainstream Muslims. Okay, so why are they testing him? If the claim of the speaker is correct, that only the Prophet can identify who the Ulil Amr are, you and I and the regular people cannot determine who the Ulil Amr are, then does Hisham bin Salem, this very close companion of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, how come he doesn't know this principle? How come he's going all the way to test Abdullah bin Ja'far al-Sadiq? He's asking him questions about zakat. And then he says that the narrator said that we then left with this feeling of loss. He says because Abdullah bin Ja'far was not able to answer the questions correctly as per what we had learned and studied under Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. So that's how we knew that Abdullah bin Ja'far cannot be the rightful Imam, because his verdict is not the same as that of his father. Right? So that's why he says we left with this feeling of loss. Although here there is a very important Zaydi critique that's also used here, which is to say that how do you know Abdullah bin Ja'far was not doing taqiyya? Because in the Imami narrative, the Imams purposely lie and they give verdicts, na'udhu billah, that agree with that of the mainstream Muslims. So perhaps Abdullah bin Ja'far did not trust Hisham ibn Salem, and so he's just giving him the wrong, false answer because he's doing taqiyya from him. So you can never know whether he's really the right Imam or the wrong Imam on the basis of this, because even the rightful Imams do taqiyya and give wrong answers.
Yeah, once you've opened up that door, once you've opened up that door, that's you have no way out of that argument. So anyone can make it, and a traditional Imami has no case against the Zaydi if he makes the argument.
Exactly, and then both the traditional Imami and the Zaydi would have no argument against the Ghali, John Andaluso, when he comes forward and he says, oh my God, the oppressed Bab of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, Abu al-Khattab, Muhammad ibn Abi Zainab, he was teaching the real Imamology. He was teaching that Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam is the God of this earth, and that is the real teaching of Imam Ja'far. So wait a minute, Imam Ja'far denied that. We have the narrations of Zurara, of Muhammad ibn Muslim. I said, Baba, that is all taqiyya.
Well, there you go. The Imami have nothing on that. Exactly.
Do you see? But the important point here is that the narrator says that we left the meeting with a feeling of loss and did not know where to go. Wait a minute. I thought the Holy Prophet had identified all the 12 Imams. So why are these closest Shia of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and the earliest Salaf of the Imamiyah feeling this loss after the demise and departure of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam? And I and Abu Ja'far al-Ahwal were together, he says. We sat down on the corners of the city of Medina weeping and confused. You can see the confusion because there is no nas. Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam did not appoint a successor. He did not designate a successor because Hisham ibn Salem, remember, is one of the closest, he's one of the core Imamiyah. If he does not know who the next successor is, that can only mean one thing. No one else knows because a successor was not designated. So in any case, he says we were confused and did not know where to go and who should we go. And we were saying to each other, where should we go now? Should we go to the Murji'ah? Yani should we go and become part of the Ahlul Sunnah, the proto Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah? Okay, the mainstream Muslims. Should we go and join the Qadariyah? Should we join the Zaydiyah? A lot of the 12ers and Imamiyahs, you can see Zaydiyah has always been a choice on the menu that they consider as they're on their way out of Imamism.
The irony is in our time, that's what's happening as well.
A lot of 12ers.
A lot of 12ers are becoming Zaidi. So look at the irony. History repeats itself.
History repeats itself. So they're considering, should we join the Zaydiyah? Because you see, now notice how this is the biggest proof. The fact that they are sitting in the streets of Medina and wondering to themselves, should we join the Murji'ah, should we join the Qadariyah, should we join the Zaydiyah, should we join the Mu'tazila, or should we go and join the Khawarij? They're thinking of joining the Khawarij, Maulana. So why? Because they have realized that if there is no successor for Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, it's game over for the whole Imami theory, that there would always be a hujjah of God on this earth. But now the issue is, Sayyid Raza, I want you to focus and ponder on one very key point here, is that Hisham ibn Salem, if you go into the books of Rijal, him and Sahib al-Taq, they're all praised as the predecessors of the Imamiyah. They're among the earliest Imamiyah, right?
Sahib al-Taq is the same guy that mashallah was teaching Imam Zayd religion, right?
Exactly. He was teaching him about divine imamah.
Mashallah, yeah.
Yes, yes. But then the issue is, Sayyid Raza, are you observing something here? These early Imamiyah, this is the biggest proof, this text that I'm just quoting in front of you, and which has been authenticated by the highest level of Rijali, 12-er Imami Rijali scholarship. The proof is here, Mu'jam al-Ahadith al-Mu'tabara, and another chapter of Mu'jam al-Ahadith al-Mu'tabara. They have authenticated these narrations. And what these narrations are showing you is that the early Imamiyah were not 12ers. They had no concept of 12 Imams. How? Because if there were 12ers,
you would say there has to be an Imam. They wouldn't say, let's go somewhere else. There has to be someone. Because we know there's only 12.
Yeah, Akhi, today's 12er, even though the 12th Imam is not in front of him, he's in Ghaiba, why does today's traditional 12er not go and join the Zaydiyah or the Ahlul Sunnah or someone else? Because he says, I'm waiting for an Imam. Until that 12th Imam comes, I have to be part of his team. I have to be part of his sect, right? But notice how these early Imamiyah, as soon as they come to a conclusion that there is no proper Imam after Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam, they don't say, wait a minute, we are 12ers. So there must be a 7th Imam. There are 6 more Imams to go. How can we give up? How can we give up after the 6th Imam? Okay, maybe Abdullah bin Ja'far has failed the test, but maybe some other son would be the rightful Imam. Or maybe something else is, maybe God is going to miraculously do something. I mean, we have been told by the Prophet that there will be 12 Imams.
100%. 100%.
But Sayyid, this is where you realize, this is why the learned Imamiyah, if you go and talk to them, so this is where the difference between the Juhal, the lay people, and the learned Imamiyah. Learned 12er Imamiyah will tell you, they will admit, they will say that all these texts that talk about 12 Imams, they are fabrications. There is no trace of them prior to Ghaiba. It's only after the 12ers and after the Shia al-Imamiyah fell into crisis, after the demise of Imam al-Askari alayhi salam, that all these texts miraculously started popping up of 12 Imams and 12 Imams and 12 Imams. But in the pre-Ghaiba period, the early Imamiyah knew of no concept of 12 Imams. That's why after the demise of the 6th Imam, as soon as there is no Imam in sight, they say, okay, let's join the Zaydis, let's join the Mu'tazilis, let's join the Khawarij, let's join, because there is no point being an Imami now. There is no Imam coming to us.
Notice as well.
Whereas, if they had been traditional Imamiyah of like today, they would be saying, no, we can't join the Murji'ah or the Qadariyah or the Zaydiyah or Mu'tazila. There are 6 more Imams to go according to the Prophet, according to the Hadithul Lawh of Jabir, the Hadith of the tablet. Remember that tablet that Jabir received from Fatima Zahra, in which the names of each of the 12 Imams are written? They would say the tablet mentions 12 Imams. How can we give up?
No concept. Doesn't exist. The concept doesn't exist yet. It hasn't been invented yet.
It hasn't been invented yet. It is not known to the closest. Remember, Hisham ibn Salem is not an outsider.
He might be doing, Hisham bin Salem might be doing taqiyya though.
Who, Hisham bin Salem is doing taqiyya?
Why not?
Who is he doing taqiyya from? The only one with him right now is Mu'min al-Taq, Sahib al-Taq. He would do taqiyya with his own fellow Imami?
You can do taqiyya with anyone. Imam Zain al-Abidin can do taqiyya with Imam Zayd.
Wow.
Anything can happen.
Basically, everyone's doing taqiyya. Even Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was doing taqiyya when he said, look, we don't have these divine powers and I'm not the God of this earth and everything is taqiyya. Then basically
everything's taqiyya until you become a shaykhi and you believe the Imams are basically God.
Exactly. So I hope you can go on with this. Inshallah, we'll share the link to this narration. It's authenticated by Ayatollah Muhsini, but throughout what you will see is that, you know, they're testing him on zakat, Abdullah bin Ja'far, okay? And here also you will see in this narration from Hisham ibn Salem, Ayatollah Muhsini authenticates how the very same thing. Should we join the Murji'a, Qadariya, Mu'tazila, Zaydiyya? We sat down on the streets of Medina with our heads lowered, not knowing where to head or whom to seek. We kept saying to ourselves, should we join the Murji'a, the Qadariya? Confusion, chaos.
Yeah, it's confusion and chaos. I think, and you mentioned about the word crisis. Sayyid Ammar should know these points, because I think Sayyid Ammar, one of his teachers is Dr. Madarasi, the one that has written crisis. I think he's in close relations, from at least from memory. A reading of crisis would have made sure that Sayyid Ammar never ever made a point like that, because this just is a theologically warped narrative that has no basis historically. And our own Turath exposes the history on this issue. So to claim something like only the Prophet can tell you, when historically the companions do not have any idea about this concept. The companions of the Imams, supposedly of the Imams, they have no idea. So to claim the Prophet told them, this is just all theologically charged business. Again, we want the historical Imam Ali, we want the historical Ahlul Bayt, not the theologically charged one that we built up later underneath the guise of ghulu.